I agree with you because Republicans, to put the onus on them for a second, have had a messaging problem with this. Why is $20 trillion in debt bad? What does this do to the economy? He's right now forecasting 3% growth. He says, you know what, we should be way more ambitious than that. That barely gets back to normal in this country. He also pointed this out, and it painted a very clear picture. If you're 30 years old in this country right now, you've never worked and lived in a healthy, robust U.S. economy. You've never been able to say, I'm going to quit my job because I can go get another one.
It is sad.
That is so sad. I mean, I'm 32. I mean, I'm all over it. But like, I mean, and another messaging, tactic that I would take is the fact that there are a lot of millennials in here, which is why they were so drawn to Bernie Sanders, that feel like their future has been completely robbed of them. And again, pointing that out, that if you're 30 years old, you don't have a future.
The messaging was pretty good yesterday. Very good. All right, well, President Trump hiring his longtime legal advisor, Mark Kasowitz, to serve as his private attorney in the federal investigation into his campaign's alleged ties to Russia. This amid reports the president plans to fight back by creating a war room to deal with a drumbeat of stories that could overshadow his agenda. Former campaign manager Corey Lewandowski and his former deputy David Bossie both said to be under consideration to head up that effort. And Politico reporting the White House may be taking a cue from previous presidents by, quote, developing a rapid response operation that relegates press inquiries to an office distinct from the White House's official press shop. As the Whitewater scandal threatened to consume Bill Clinton's presidency, his deputy chief of staff tapped spin doctors Mark Fabiani and Chris Lahane, who came to be known as the masters of disaster, to handle the affair. All right, so Herman Cain, do you think this is a good plan, a good strategy?
Absolutely. President Trump, believe it or not, asked me for some advice before he entered the presidential race.
Well, we would believe that.
I only gave him one piece of advice: be prepared for lawsuits and counter lawsuits. He's now hired that attorney. I believe this is excellent. Secondly, the war room idea is also an excellent idea, because he now realizes being president is like being in a blender without the top on. And so he can't possibly, draw all of these conclusions himself. He needs some help in getting the top back on the blender, Harris.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. Also the position that, outside of having to clean up the floor after the blender gets going. Let's talk a little bit about the position, though, that his communications team and his press secretary team have been in. And this really takes the pressure off of them. We've been hearing reports that there may be, some changes that happen. We'll report the news on that when it happens, so we're not going to speculate. But what this does is it allows those teams to concentrate on the day-to-day, and for the drumbeat that Democrats and critics would want to press against this president, there's a separate entity for that. Especially important when the president is not on U.S. soil, which is what I was alluding to. You've got drumbeat continuing, and he's over there.
I call it narrative versus facts. It was resist, resist, resist. Comey, Comey, Comey. Russia, Russia, Russia. Just all of these drumbeats that you're talking about. So now you've got a group that can either focus on beating back the drumbeat and being a resource to the official communications staff.
TDS.
Yes.
Tag it.
You like it?
TDS.
I've had so many conversations about what's going wrong with President Trump's narrative, and I've started going back to people who have worked for politicians I know and who are complete and total utter loyalists. And as you know, because you ran for president, how you make a good campaign work, and I say this with absolute love and not in a negative or nefarious way, but you're the mafia boss if you're the candidate, and you have to have all your consigliaries who are ride or die to the end of time, who think you are the future of America and there is no one any different. So what was always bizarre to me is that President Trump had a lot of people in his communications team who weren't big supporters of him. Quite frankly, if you hire never Trumpers, you hire people who didn't believe in Trump from the beginning, of course your messaging is going to be off because you haven't experienced this journey with him. I'm not the biggest fan of Corey Lewandowski, at least from some of his behavior on the campaign trail, but he seems to understand how President Trump's brain works and what he needs.
He's also loyal.
So so bringing back some of these loyalists is what I would do from day one. Again, Sean Spicer, Reince Priebus, some of these people, of course their loyalty lies elsewhere. They were on you know, they weren't so positive about him running for president. So you need the people, bringing these kind of people back, I think, is the way to the future.
I would just add, too, that when you talk about national security and all the leaks that have gone on, bringing back loyalists is actually a good idea for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it isn't just about the president knowing that he can count on these people, which I imagine might make things smoother, but with the leaks, if you put somebody in the war room also in charge of finding the leakers, it's better for all of us. You don't want those calls with heads of leaders leaking out and being, you know, all over the place in ways that you can't control it.
I like the separating of the messaging. I think that makes a lot of sense. If you have one team that's specifically in charge of these issues that turn into hot potatoes, and you have the person, because we watched that press conference so many times in the afternoon, and you see it go by, and then amount of time that they get hung up on whatever the, you know, ridiculous story of the day is, and they don't get to the real business. If whoever was at that podium had the ability to say, you know, I'm going to direct you to this person, I'm going to direct you to this person, and just didn't deal with those questions, that would really help the messaging, I think, get out about what's going right, or the actual work they're doing versus the scandal.
They also need a morale boost, and if they have good people around them, as you know, Mr. Kane, that, you know, make President Trump, help him feel empowered and emboldened, it will also be good for the country.
Well, this trip clearly so far good for the president as well. A major moment on Capitol Hill coming soon as House Republicans await the critical report card on their revised Obamacare repeal bill. Why so much is riding on the CBO score, and whether Republicans will be able to get this huge agenda item done.